Hey everybody, and welcome to Building 61's virtual show and tell. I'm Adam.
And I'm Zach.
It's going to be a real light show tonight. It's just Zach and I on tonight talking about some projects. Emily's off today, and we're not going to have Robbie on this show. He actually got laid off during the corona furloughs that happened. We're hoping to have him back as a special guest whenever we can. So hopefully we'll be seeing him soon.
Yeah, shout out to Robbie. Can't wait to see him back.
We've been pretty busy getting things rolling in Building 61. We've got lasers running pretty steadily. You want to talk about that, Zach?
Yeah, so online virtual laser cutting guided practice is going really well. We've had a lot of signups. We're churning a lot of parts out, and the system seems to be working. People are bringing in their own materials. So we're working on things like I think as complicated as it's going to get. And that's still available and available for anyone who's taken the training. Adam, I think you're working on a virtual training beginning this week. So I know people have been asking about that. You want to talk a little bit about what it's going to look like to get qualified training for the laser cutters in the near future?
Yes, that's right. So we have virtual tool orientation just around the corner. We're going to be doing some filming this week and next for that. What's going to happen is we're going to have a short video that's going to talk about general operation of that machine. And we're also going to have an event that is essentially a live in-person class where we're going to watch that video together, and you can ask me any questions that you like about the tool. And so once you've done that, we can jump right in. You can sign up for virtual guided access.
Don't you hate that, though, when someone kind of talks through the film, or if they're like, oh, I went to architecture school and I already know everything there is to know about lasers, so I'm just going to talk through the videos anyway. Is that a problem you're anticipating, and how will you deal with it?
We're making it up as we go along. This is us building the plane while we're flying. This is COVID times. This is COVID times, all right?
Listen, edit that out. We know exactly what we're doing, just like everyone else right now.
But and that's kind of like an important thing to realize about all of this, is that we're kind of figuring out stuff as we go. And then, just like in making anything, it's fine to make mistakes. You're just going to iterate on it. So if the first tool orientation's weird, congratulations, you're part of the first weird tool orientation. It's only going to get better from there. So we can laugh about it later.
When we started the virtual laser cutting guided practice, the only one that showed up, that signed up, were rabbits, and because there's just so many of them, and I blame Emily for that. And shout out to Emily, she's got the night off, but we miss you and we love you and we hope you're watching, and can't wait to see you soon.
We'll try to make this entertaining.
So far, it's
so far so good. Other cool stuff that's happening in the space. We are working on the CNC machine.
Yep.
So it's been over 4 years now since we installed that thing. We got it in a 1,500-pound kit, uncrated it, loaded it into the space, built out everything, consulted the documentation for hours and hours and hours, trying to figure out exactly where things went. Had to build the spoil board from scratch, so which includes like a baseboard, a plenum, which is where all the vacuum pull down stuff happens, and then eventually the bleeder board, which goes on top, which is where all those cool cut patterns end up. And we're in the process of fixing that now.
Yeah, a few battle scars in there over the years. This is going to be like our first solid top, no split in the middle, which should give us like a flatter surface than ever. I'm looking forward to being the first person to forget to tighten his tool down for a second time and destroy an otherwise perfectly good spoil board. But that's cool. We're talking about it because we hope in the near future that those virtual guided practices, actually we hope those virtual guided practices go away. We're hoping that human beings are back in the space, sharing the space and the experiences with us as soon as possible. But until then, as we add a few more services. And Adam, I noticed today that the I think it's called the Foundry, which is the maker space, so to speak, of the engineering school. It's one of like the 23 maker spaces of the engineering school of CU. And I noticed
they got a bunch.
that no one can get to unless it's the BTU. That they started services today, and so because students are going to be largely remote learning, and so you're welcome, the Foundry, for the idea to turn your space into a service center in the COVID times. I'm sure that you got that from us, and it's just free.
No one's thinking the same thing.
No one's ever thought of that before, and so we know that you got it from us, and we're grateful. Thanks for the non-shout out about that idea. It was really good. But we are hoping to add some more services as we go. I think 3D printing is right around the corner because lots of you have asked where my 3D printer's at, and so that seems like the next logical step. And until we get into the big machines.
Throw some cameras on those things too. I personally think it'd be fun to actually stream some of that action out to the web.
I mean, there's the RNC, and then there's watching a 3D printer print for like 4 hours. I know who's got my attention.
I'm watching all 3 3D printers. Just have them up on each monitor.
That's fantastic. Also, there's room for signups on these show and tell nights, so that Adam and I don't have to fill your evening with this rich and this complex of a form of entertainment. We want to be entertained by you, and we miss you, and it's a new way for us to connect with the community. So look for those signups on Tuesday nights. We more or less have it figured out how to do it right now.
Just to cover that, when you go to the calendar, so if you go to building61.org, that's our portal on the library website. If you go to the calendar, you'll be able to see next week's event there. If you go to that and you sign up, it's going to send you a code to join us here on the channel. So when you go to that, you're going to be set up in essentially a broadcast room where we are right now. You'll be backstage. And then when you're up, we'll kind of let you know in our private chat here. And then you'll be on. We'll get to talk about whatever cool things you're making.
Yeah. And it's been really good so far. That said, Adam, I've never really, apart from the first week, ever shared anything about Jack.
My dog's here.
I hear.
Special guest, the dog. No,
special guest, Jack. You should bring him on. I feel like Elizabeth Warren got a huge bump in the polling her non-campaign.
I'm going to get him. He wants to go outside. He clearly wants to go play.
All right. See you later, sorry, Adam. I'll hold this down.
All right, cool. I'm gonna take him out.
Okay. No, don't leave me. Please don't leave me.
I'm not gonna leave you.
Okay. So I was really excited, Adam, to dig up some old stuff, and I mean old. I had to dig it up off of this thing, which do you recognize these? These are from the early, like the pre-2010s even. This is an external hard drive, kids, and what that did was store files. And if we think of like a thumb drive now, that how hard is it to get a thumb drive, Adam? Where can you get those these days?
Bottom of a box of cereal.
Like a 1 terabyte thumb drive is your Cracker Jack prize at this point. I shouldn't plug Sweet Treats. I'm in Boulder. They'll tax the heck out of you. Anyway, this is like a 256 kilobyte memory drive from. It's more than that. I think it's more than that. But from I started using this in about 2006, and in 2006, I did a thing that I think you'll find interesting, and I'm going to share my screen to help narrate the story here.
I'm personally excited to hear about your mysterious past.
This is proof that I was in fact younger than I am at one point. So I'm going to share my screen and pull this up and go full screen. So this is an iron. This is an iron pour, and it's not a traditional iron pour. This is actually sort of a mobile iron pour that is in the streets of Grand Rapids, Michigan. In 2006, Grand Rapids hosted the International Sculpture Conference. And if you're thinking anything specifically about Grand Rapids these days, I know, But people were smarter and more educated in Grand Rapids, Michigan at that time. I promise you. So, and I'm talking about, I'm just going to clear that up in case there's 3 people watching from Grand Rapids. You weren't dumb. The Secretary of Education for the United States owns that city, and she was just as brilliant then as she is now. I'll leave it at that. So this is an iron pour in the middle of the streets of Grand Rapids for the International Sculpture Conference. This device here, can you see my arrow there, Adam? I can't see.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, so this thing right here is a cupola, and it is it's very sophisticated. If you turn this bit upside down right here, what you'd have is a trash can, a galvanized steel trash can. This is a brake drum from, you know, like a pretty large truck. This is some other junk that was found in a junk pile, and this is a table that was made out of more junk. So a cupola is a really sort of simple way to heat, to generate a tremendous amount of heat, and it's enough to melt iron, which the Fahrenheit temperature for iron melting is around 2,600 degrees. So it's quite warm. And this fellow right here, you can see the beard and the shades. I feel like that bit of it hasn't changed. That is a younger version of me. And if I could go back in time and talk to that younger version of me now, I would beg him not to let Adam and Petrus go to the Tool concert, thus sending 2020 into the death spiral it has become.
That's our fault, because you should have gone.
I wish you'd have thought about that. I wish you'd have thought about that. This is
the alternate time. We're on the wrong timeline.
It is, and I blame you both, but I also forgive you both, and I love you both. So that's me kind of stirring the pot. What I'm doing there is adding like a series of bags of materials. You can see here, this is what we call a charge. One charge of this stuff. These are each little pieces of cracked iron, and this is like nothing fancy. This is like literally probably some like water and sewage pipes that we cracked into pieces with hammers so that they would form these. It's about 20 pounds a piece. And in these buckets right here is another 20 pounds of straight up limestone, like gravel that you would throw in, like in your driveway. And that acts as a flux. You put it in the cupola in a series like flux, then metal, then flux, then metal. And it's burning on top of coke, not the kind of coke my Uncle Crad was into, coke, which is just aerated coal. So it burns really, really, really hot and enough to melt that metal up. And we're pouring it into a crucible here, and you can see you actually pull this little clay plug out of there, and it just comes spouting out. And it's awesome, Adam. It's like sparks flying. The heat here is tremendous. I mean, the radiant heat of a pile of metal that's 2,600 degrees is pretty impressive. That's me about to throw. You can see right here, this is a bag full of limestone. Wow. Yeah, and this, so you know, this is basically Smaug breath. This is a tremendous amount of heat. I'm in Kevlar that's coated with aluminum that reflects really entirely all the heat. And the screen over my face is, it's really just kind of like window screen. It's like steel screen that you'd see in a window. But that little air gap and that screen between your skin and the heat is enough to make it bearable. It's not comfortable, and I was there for a couple of hours. But and you can see here, this is a really full, not cupola, crucible. I think I said cupola before. So crucible. This is like how you burn witches. And that's pouring into, this is a very thin ceramic slurry metal mold. So at some point, there was some kind of a positive pattern in there, probably made out of wax. That mold was burnt out, and once it's empty, it's this amazing, it's sort of like a space shuttle tiles material. It's just incredibly refractory. It's a heat refractory, so it can withstand these like incredible temperature shocks. It's actually quite thin. It's probably a quarter of an inch or so, which for Adam, that's let's see, it's about what, 9 millimeters. Is that right? 12 millimeters.
It's like 6.
Six. Okay. Just doing that for in case Janet's out there watching. And that's it. So that's what the iron pour looks like. And then this is my little token piece from that pour. And this guy named Dan from SAIC, which I think, Adam, you did some time at SAIC, right?
I did some time at SAIC about a year and a half.
So that's the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and Dan is this madman iron pouring guy from there, and he worked with a professor named Carolyn Ottmers, and she was also completely nuts. But this is my cast iron thing. It says ISC, and you can't really see it on the camera there, but it says 2006 Grand Rapids, and so that's just a chunk of iron, and that weighs, I don't know, maybe 2 pounds. So
that was that poured into a ceramic mold there? Is that what happened, or?
Good question. So that one was actually poured into a sand mold. So you may have heard of sand molds.
Okay.
A sand mold is quite primitive. It's literally sand, and then there's a binder in it, and you kind of pack it into this frame, and you literally build half of it around your pattern. So when I say pattern, I mean whatever the thing is you're trying to translate into a bronze piece. And then you sort of flip it over and put the other half in. You pull that sand mold apart, you remove the pattern, you literally carve gating in it, the plumbing system, so to speak, with just spoons and knives. This is a really low-tech thing. We could do this if we had like safe facilities. It's a little dirty, and there's a lot of fire involved, and so, you know, especially around here, we need to be really, really safe. But then that mold gets wrapped back up, strapped back together, and you pour directly into the sand mold. And you know, this is why it's probably hard to see in this tiny camera, but this is actually quite rough.
I do see the grit there, yeah.
Yeah, and that's right out of the sand mold. You know, we did very little to clean these pieces up because you know, they're chocolate and they're
yeah.
Actually.
You know, if you touch a filling with metal, that feeling that you get, that's called galvanic shock.
I don't have fillings. What do you? I've always had lovely teeth. So that's like one facet of my metal casting career, and I know it's something that we've talked a lot about, and so I wanted to share that with you. And then another facet of it was I was actually super lucky to be able to blend the digital fabrication world with metal casting, and the way that took shape. And this was, again, like 2006, 2009. You know, most of our coworkers weren't even born yet. So, you know, Laura, for instance, she was, Laura was probably teething,
right.
and also didn't have any fillings because she was going to lose all of those teeth to be replaced with perfectly healthy teeth again before. You know, I think she has relatively good oral hygiene habits. She's probably got great teeth, but anyway, I'm digressing.
I mean, there might be time travel involved here. I don't know.
There could be. And again, I already told you what I'd do if I could time travel.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Full circle.
Yeah. Hi, Jack. Jack's like,
Jack's amused.
Shut up. So we started to blend 3D printing in this process of investment casting, and investment is that ceramic mold stuff. So investment used to be like you'd pour a whole pot of this crazy big sort of is a mixture of plaster and sand and vermiculite, which is essentially asbestos. And so like it's also quite healthy. You're not only breathing metal, molten metal fumes, but you're filling your molds with asbestos because, well, it breathes, you know, like cotton. So we started 3D printing, and we worked with these old. It was like a cornstarch material, and I can't even remember the name of the 3D printing company, but it was sort of a layered, like a glue layer on a powdered material. It's pretty hard to see now because any powdered materials are usually fused with like a laser, but this was like glued with a binder, and it was literally like a potato starch type material. And then you add this plumbing system, which was wax, and that was all a manual system. And it kind of looked like this. So I've never gotten a chance to show you this, but this is sort of, this is actually the old foundry that I worked in at the University of Michigan. And This is us in action, and I'll
here you go.
throw.
You're up.
Is it up? Okay, and I'm gonna throw the link to this video in the comments. And oh, I can't. I'll do that at another time.
I believe in our audience's ability to Google the title, which is listed here. How to make a bronze sculpture part 2.
Part 2. And here it goes.
I don't think we've got audio here, but it's looking cool.
Oh, we don't?
Oh, I think your volume's kind of down on your YouTube there.
Oh, here we go.
Maybe? I don't know.
Better?
Nope.
Good. Oh, well, then I can narrate over this. Oh, excellent. Let's do this. Let me restart this and do the right. I'm going to do the right thing.
All right.
I'm going to click. Here we go.
I'm going to try to pick up the dog. He won't know me. This is going to be like today's mission. All right. I'm adding him back. Hopefully this is.
One sec. All right. This is awesome. Technical difficulties. Here we go with audio. As soon as this. Oh, who's that guy?
This is where we do the burnout. We take.
Okay, now we got audio, Adam.
Your ceramic mold.
You got it.
With the wax burnt out. We reheat that, and at the same time, melt a pot of bronze in a blast furnace, and take that up to liquid at about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit.
This is how I used to talk.
Temperature.
Short, choppy
the metal's
sentences.
Melted, and we know the metal's hot enough to pull out. This beautiful little dance starts. Somebody's moving out of the kiln, and these guys in spacesuits are pulling a pot of 2,000 plus degree metal. You're dealing with extreme materials here. I mean, not to get too crazy, but it could melt your face off. And you certainly don't want to melt your face off. And inside
your style hasn't changed at all.
Thousands degree.
It hasn't. It's I mainly just have more gray hair.
Original sculpture, which in about 12 hours or so, you can break out of that mold. And inside of it is your statue, your sculpture in bronze.
And who do we get here at the end?
That's how you make a bronze sculpture.
The Batman.
The Batman!
Right? And then that's funny, they showed that last piece that they showed was actually wax. So there you go, man. There's a peek into my past, who I used to be. And when we started working with 3D printing patterns, this was one of the first pieces that actually got done. And this was gifted to me by a young art student named Anne. I can't even remember her last name. But it's this weird sort of like, kind of weird, like almost alien artifact from the future, so to speak. And this piece was completely 3D printed. And then it's pretty difficult to see on the inside, but the sort of the artifacts of the process of like actually attaching a big wax plumbing system to this piece are still visible on the inside, and you can even see some of the ceramic. So there's little itty bitty white spots in there. That's the ceramic slurry. That's actually the material that holds the metal when it's poured. And so I think I'm going to bring this piece into Building 61 and just let it sit on our curio closet shelf, and so I can talk to people about bronze casting, which people are pretty fluent now with doing that with 3D printed patterns. But I can honestly say, back in 2006, 2009, it was new enough that we were able to publish some papers talking about this new possibility of using 3D printers to make patterns for metal casting. So pretty rad.
That's pretty amazing. The like it's almost funny to think how, you know, the 3D printing process you're describing just seems so primitive by comparison to now. And even 3D printing to me, like standard FDM printing, like the kind we do in Building 61, that also feels like simplistic or primitive by comparison to some of the really crazy like resin or SLA 3D printers we're seeing out there. Because essentially all you've got is a nozzle that's got material being pushed through it, and it just follows steps. Like that is like the extent of like the technology.
That it's not that different. And even before that, and I was introduced to 3D printing in the so that was mid aughts, the mid, like 05, 06. And that technology was really based on technologies that had existed since the late 60s. So we think of the process of machines like building three-dimensional models as, a early 21st century thing. And the truth is, like a lot of interesting ideas and technologies, particularly in the United States, it came out of the 60s. I mean, it was like mushrooms and LSD and 3D printers. And, now all of those things, thankfully, are gone and people don't use them anymore. Adrian,
yeah.
I see Adrian's. Adrian says, have you ever accidentally dipped a hand in the flaming ore? Here's your answer, Adrian.
Still strong here. I mean, those could be 3D printed. Your hands.
And in fact, and I'll also sort of end the story with this anecdote, Adam, because I think you have something that I'm very interested in, and I want to get to that. But my safety policy back in the day was that I would let my beard grow until we had any kind of a serious accident. Now, when you're making things, skinned knuckles, I think like I skinned that knuckle today, and I skinned that little pinky knuckle right there. It's all sore.
How did you even do that?
I'm not going to go into it. But I will tell you this: I was using sandpaper. Okay. That's all I was using. So when you're making things, like, injuries happen, and so my policy was like anything short of stitches is not actually an injury, and I will let my beard grow until we have any accident that requires. Actually, I think stitches didn't even count because I'd had so many stitches at that point. I was like, yeah, you kids need to toughen up. But in 5 years of working there, one minor accident because in the middle of a metal pour, and that's because when metal hits bare concrete, any micro amounts of moisture in the air that are sitting sort of on the surface of that concrete can cause like a flash boil on a micro scale, and essentially that molten metal like pops up into the air. Now we're all standing around with Kevlar and helmets and so on and so forth, and that's why, because the safety in that situation is not a joke. That's why you choreograph everything ahead of time. That's why everything has a plan. You're not making stuff up in that situation. Well, somebody dropped like a tiny little drop of molten bronze on the floor, on this concrete floor. Normally, I feel like Adrian is, how was Naked David made? Which Naked David? Because there are some bronzes and there are some stones carved. But if you're talking about Naked David, Michelangelo's like 16-foot one in Florence, that's carved marble. But there are some Davids that, let's see, I think there's a Donatello David that's bronze. More or less the same process. They just didn't have the cool chemistry that we have now. So anyway, this piece hits the floor, it pops up in the air, and a tiny little drop of it goes down the back of Sally's collar. And Sally got this tiny little drop of metal on the back of her neck. But even that was enough to blister and kind of burn the skin. And so I had to shave my beard. And I got to be honest with you, Adam, I'll hold to this safety standard to this day. But here's something I want to tell everyone listening and everyone that's ever worked with me and everyone that might work with me in the future. There's a reason that I have a beard. And that reason is I have a hideous, disgusting chin. So My chin actually
talking about?
stops like right here. This is all beard. This is all sort of like cosmetic to make it look like I have a chin. But if I shave this off, it's just terrifying, and it's nauseating, and tends to put people off of their appetite. So I can never go out to dinner with people, and so that's why I have this beard, and that's why I insist on a high degree of safety at Building 61.
I thought it was just so people could get us mixed up.
I think there are other reasons that are legal in Colorado that cause people to get us mixed up. So, on that note, Adam, you have a thing, and I want to learn about it.
All right. And while I grab that, yes, that 3D, David, that is the one in Florence, the Donatello one, I think, right?
Florence. So in the Florence Academy, there's a there's the big 16-foot white marble one. That's carved stone. But sticking on the subject of bronze casting, in case I'm mistaken, bronze casting has been more or less the same process for 5,000 years, so pre-Renaissance, going back into early China. Carol Burnett got a chin implant. Oh. So the bronze casting process has more or less been the same. You have a refractory, meaning a material that takes away the heat as fast and evenly as possible. The cupola that I showed for that iron pour is probably the early version of how metal was melted, and the whole process is essentially the same. What's gotten better is our chemistry and sort of our engineering. So now we melt metal in the blast furnace, for instance, and it's relatively clean. Now we can use really thin, ceramic molds, which have this very specific, amazing chemistry. If you've never seen a metal pour, it's so rad, and it's worth checking out. But essentially, the process is the same from the Bronze Age all the way out until today. Like our technique, our engineering, and our chemistry is. I'm not going to answer that, Robbie. Robbie's saying it's time to move on to the third act, and I feel like I've already shown my flute. So now, Adam, it's time for you to use it.
In the third. All right. Okay, well, so we're going to talk about a subject which is near and dear to my heart, which is Star Wars, and some of the projects that I kind of do on the side from time to time. And I'm going to lead off with a clip. So this is by far my favorite costume from the Star Wars universe. This is the Scout Trooper or Biker Scout at their best here in the Mandalorian show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I have gone ahead and I've been collecting parts for this for quite some time, and I have been assembling my own costume. And I started on this a real long time ago, and it's been kind of slow going. But I have with me here today,
a long time ago?
Not quite that long.
Yeah, thank you.
Basically, like right as we were opening the makerspace when I started getting all these parts. And so like this is all part of a world of like replica prop collectors. So there's a thing called the Replica Prop Forum, and there's an organization called the 501st Legion, and these are hardcore movie accurate costume people, and it is a totally fascinating hobby for people going and looking for the most extreme details you could find in movie history or television history and trying to replicate the props that they find. And this can be a kind of an amazing, like it's like a type of like detective work or archaeological dig, because when you're looking for these types of things and you're looking at a tiny detail on a costume, you're like, where did that come from? What is that? It could be a type of chip that appears on like the mouse droids from Star Wars. They have like details on the side. You know, finding the exact chip that they use to go on there is a thing. Or however the way that they built a lot of the ships in Star Wars is they were kit bashed, which is essentially a process of taking existing models and cutting them up and building them together until you actually had a finished design. So if you look at pretty much any ship from Star Wars, almost all of the components are either flat pieces of plastic card or pieces of World War II battleships and planes. So that's how you get that really kind of like authentic lived-in feel from those parts. But the costumes, it's a whole nother thing because you're trying to make something that is wearable. So this is my Scout Trooper helmet. This I actually purchased as part of a kit. You can find these online from individual makers. A lot of the Star Wars costumes that are out there are not officially licensed, so it's essentially artisans in their garages or their workshops who have the tools to make these kinds of things. So the way that the parts for this thing was made is it's almost entirely vacuum formed. So this is 3 parts. Yep, 3 different pieces or 4 different pieces. Each bit was vacuum formed, and it came not fully cut out, so I actually had to trim all of the edges on this thing to get those parts set.
Cool.
And then there's a couple parts which are resin cast, and so details like this, like on the snout, this would be called a greebly. So whoever made this kit actually went out there and found the individual sort of like movie accurate parts that were used to create this, and I think this is like a little like distance sensor piece, and then I'm not sure what this is, but this is all resin cast, and I've actually got pictures of the build process. So,
and that's you said it's what? Explain a couple of things.
Sure.
Slow down just a second. So vacuum forming, first of all, explain that to everybody because we have access to that. We have a little vacuum forming system at Building 61.
We do. So vacuum forming is a really cool way of getting duplicates of something done really quickly. And this is really helpful if you need to make like 100 pieces of armor for a movie. So this started out essentially as a carved sculpture. So someone probably carved the original out of wood or clay. So each piece has like a starting shape. And what happens is you put that shape onto a vacuum bed, and then you have a sheet of plastic with a heating element above it that is getting that plastic super hot. And when it's beginning to droop, like so it's malleable at this point, you pull down the arm that's holding the sheet of plastic over your sculpted buck and turn on the vacuum, and it gets sucked down into place, and it cools very, very quickly. And then you get like whatever your finished sculpt is. So, and ABS plastic in the sheets that it comes like on this, it has sort of a smooth side, so you get this really shiny kind of futuristic armor look to it. And on the inside, it's a little bit rougher. And sometimes it has a texture, but it looks rad. I mean, so like to make like 100 stormtroopers for Star Wars, like if you had this machine and you had the sculpts set up, you could.
You just need a machine that sucks.
You do. That's awesome. That's it. And heats. So I've got some pictures of the build, which I'm going to pull up now.
And you were talking about, while you're doing that, you were talking about another thing on the snout piece, the greebly. What is that?
So greebly is a term. It's just known in the replica like prop community as any type of part that is like a small detail that is important for like the accuracy or completion of like a costume or prop. So
I see. And of course that originated in Greebly, Colorado, just northeast of here.
As far as I know, that is not correct.
Okay.
And actually, I'm not sure of the origin of that term. I think there's an apocryphal tale of it.
I think it's probably.
I'm not going to get it wrong. So definitely, if you're interested in this kind of thing, look it up.
I'm pretty sure it's from Weld County. Yeah. No, that I'm usually right, and I feel like I am again. Greebly, Colorado. Everybody knows it.
Everyone knows Greebly, Colorado. Shout out to all the people watching from Greebly.
All my people in Greebly.
All right, so I am going to stop the share. So tricky, so technical. Screen 3. All right. All right, so getting things lined up is very difficult because when you're doing this type of vacuum forming, it tends to warp or change shape depending on each time that you do it, or if like the buck is slightly out of place or how you trim it down. It can get straightened up. I had to come up with a system to actually get it to work. So what you're seeing here are actually neodymium magnets. Nothing is glued in place at this time. I'm just going through and trying to make markings so that it's symmetrical as possible, because the buck itself, the helmets in Star Wars, if you look at them, none of them are perfectly symmetrical. So there's this like incredible drive to get accuracy to make sure that like all of those tiny details are captured. Now,
I've tried them on. I've got a Vader helmet. I've tried on your speeder helmet and your stormtrooper helmets, and it's like, yeah, they're all just a little kind of squee-hawed, right?
Yeah, just a little bit, because, you know, like they didn't have 3D printing, so it was somebody sculpting the helmet and just being like, well, this is about as symmetrical as I can get it. Print 1,000 of them, or mold 1,000 of them.
Right.
So this is a pretty close to accurate helmet. There's a couple of other makers in the community that do this. So like if you go out there and you look up Biker Scout like kits, you should be able to find them out there. And so this is some more views of just trying to get things lined up. You can see I'm really working to try to like figure out where things are going to go, just to make it work. And then finally, when I got it, I went through and I sanded the edge of those areas where it was going to connect, and just cut it as deeply as I could with an X-Acto knife just on the seam. And then I used E6000 to get it bound, and I just used these little spring clamps to hold it all together, and I would leave it pretty much overnight for each part just to make sure that it was like truly on there. And that E6000 is really, really excellent. So
and E6000 is like an epoxy type adhesive, or is it a two-part?
It's just a one-part adhesive. You can get it in just like big tubes pretty much anywhere, any hardware store, any like Michael's or Joann Fabrics, or online. And it's generally it's like an industrial waterproof adhesive, and I just refer to it as like cold hot glue, because it has a very similar look when it's dried, although I think you can get it in both white and black. I use the clear stuff all the time, and it dries perfectly clear, and it stays clear for the life of it, or at least as long as I've been using it, which is pretty nice. And it's super sturdy and flexible. So if you have a part that has like a little bit of flex, you're not worried that it's just going to break if there's like a little bit of extra tension. So if you were using like CA super glue, like a Gorilla Glue or Crazy Glue or something like that, the instant that you flexed it even a little bit, it would snap.
I feel like that's a common mistake for homemade Halloween costumes, is that people don't anticipate, it's probably going to snow in Boulder. It snows like 5 times a year, and one of those nights is October 31st. And most glues, when they get cold, they can get brittle, and your costume's falling apart in the middle of Pearl Street, and you're embarrassed, and you're disgraced.
Yeah, I mean, so this will really save you. So it's awesome for any kind of costume making. I really recommend it. And like in terms of like going out and wearing it, there's a massive community, a group of essentially a nonprofit called the 501st Legion, that is all just like Imperial, Star Wars stormtroopers, officers, anything that you might find out there. They will go out and they will troop. And during the shooting of The Mandalorian, they actually did not have enough costumes for one of the scenes in that show, so they actually had to reach out to the local costuming community and bust them into the set, and they did not know where they were going. So as they're dropping in,
fulfilling a dream for that regiment of the 501st.
It's amazing. I mean, like they assume, like, because they're typically called in by Lucasfilm to, it's like a premiere or like some kind of like publicity event, or they're gonna, go. They do a lot of charity stuff, so they'll go to hospitals and do really cool stuff like that. But to be just bust in and be like, wait a minute, why are there cameras? Like, why is that Taika Waititi over there? Like,
and oh my God, it's Chubbs Peterson. He's right there. It's unbelievable. And who's that guy in the mask? Can you get him to take his mask off? And he's like, "This is the way."
Yeah,
but they do that. I mean, I think replica people get that call every once in a while, right? Like, it's not uncommon for R2D2 builders to be called in for, you've got a sort of a first crew and a second crew and a third crew on a film that size, and you need R2D2 to be in Tunisia, and you also need him to be in, Palo Alto. And so there's not enough R2s, and they don't necessarily need like a fully functional R2, but some of these R2 builds that you'll see at maker fairs and stuff are so detailed and so legit
detailed
on camera, and so tight when it comes to the radio control that they actually those people do get the call out to be in the films, right?
Yeah, and there's some people that will say about this stuff like, well, like why don't you just like make your own like character or costume? But I think this is a really serious part of making. I feel like this is an amazing way to build your resume, to have like an understanding of like how something was physically made for use in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
This can teach you a lot, and it's more or less a conversation that you're having with the world. Like if you're excited about a thing and you're like passionate about it, you should absolutely do it.
There's a great documentary about a group of sort of enthusiasts that recorded the whole Raiders of the Lost Ark movie, basically in their backyard over the course of something like 20 years, and the final budget piece that they couldn't afford was the explosion of the plane that was supposed to be transporting the Ark out of Egypt. And they finally filmed that, but the whole movie was recreated, and now that is a documentary that you can watch on like any streaming channel in the world.
That's awesome, and what better way to like learn the skills of a craft too than to just do it? There's nothing holding you back. Like if you're excited about this and you want to do it, like just go ahead. I mean, I knew
just
nothing.
Blow up a plane.
Yeah, I knew nothing about E6000 before going into this. Now it's like my favorite adhesive in the world. I recommend it for so many things.
I feel like you throw that around.
Yeah, I do a lot. So here's some different views of just like trying to get things lined up. And again, it's a vacuum form buck where everything is like intentionally a little wonky. So trying to find how the mask is gonna to fit on was a bit of a process. So I've got a dowel going through there. You can see on this one, there was a divot on here that's indicating where they recommend that you put the hole, and I did like the test lineup and I didn't agree, so I drilled a hole, and that was wrong. So I drilled another hole where I put that mark. So yeah, third time's a charm, or second time's a charm.
Yep, that's the way it goes.
But just gotta roll with it, like just try to improvise. So this is just making sure that everything's gonna fit. Here's the chin strap. These are super awesome tools. These are I think what are they called? The Zuron plastic cutters. So they're super, super sharp, straight edged things. So if you need to cut ABS plastic, they do a really good job. Underneath here, I've got a pin vise. So that's a little hand drill that you can just turn with your fingers while it rests against your palm. So I essentially like drilled a little hole on each end and cut it out with the snips.
Oh my gosh, so much manual work.
There's a ton of manual work in this. So this is just putting holes in the straps. There's the chin strap on there.
Excellent.
Here's another.
Oh, go ahead, Adam.
Oh, I was going to say. So this is another interesting technique. So the ear holes on this biker helmet, they needed to be cut out, and what the kit came with was essentially a vinyl decal that gives you the exact shape of what it is. And so I carefully applied that as best as I could within that space, and like that was like an amazing moment of like, oh, vinyl decals, it's not just like a sticker. Like you can use this as a tool, like to actually get yourself like really set up for difficult alignment, especially on like a part like this, which is sculpted and molded. You can really just get it in there. I just traced it.
Nice reference points. Yeah.
Yep. Just reference points. Here's another truly kind of miserable process. All that was filled in. I drilled it, and then I just took a Dremel and I chewed away at the edge.
Oh my god!
Until I got there, because it was spooky. I mean, like I only had one mask, so I like kind of just did it a little bit at a time until I got there.
So the horror that's in my heart right now is that no matter what type of material you're using, anytime you take this like sort of preformed piece and you're getting it to the highest resolution that you possibly can through an automatic process, and you get your hand involved. This goes back to this concept that's talked about like throughout writing and philosophy of craftsmanship called the workmanship of risk. And the workmanship of risk means that with every cut of that Dremel, with every grind, you run the risk of destroying this entire piece. And the level of I would say the level of anxiety there can't be overstated, whether you're working in vacuum formed plastic or metal for that matter. Like you slip with a grinder and you slice the face off your sculpture, like you're done, man. That means you're going back to welding something and then grinding it and then trying to blend it all back together.
I don't think you can see it. I don't think the contrast is good enough, but I did miss, and I scratched right across the nose right here. So there's a tiny blemish that I am super aware of, because that was I was like finishing up. It's like, of course, like the moment when you the end is in sight. That's when you let your guard down. Like every time. I mean, like doing so many projects, you'd think be like aware of that by now, but it's how it happens. It's the last.
Yeah, Robbie says this is a thing about wood. It's definitely a thing about wood. It's and I think David Pye is the author of that, the workmanship of risk, and I think he was a woodworker, because he's like, every time you like run a chisel through the bottom of that like claw foot detail on the bottom of your table is the moment that you could just like split the entire leg. And that's what you were doing. Like, I feel the risk there. I can totally, I'm just like, it makes me nervous to even look at that, especially with a Dremel.
Yeah. I don't even know why I was using that as like the tool, but
you love Dremels.
It still feels right to me though. Like, I'm not sure how I was gonna.
You're a Dremel guy.
Like, I am.
You're kind of a Dremel guy.
It eventually worked out. I really do like the Dremel. It's a versatile little tool. To get the visor in there, that's another vacuum formed, or actually I don't think it's vacuum formed. I think it's probably just heat set, so it gives it a slight curve. But I needed to get it locked into the back, and I don't know if I have a picture. Nope. Well, that's the tool that I used to bend the actual plastic. So those are just some extra pieces of ABS that I had laying around.
And that's like a fusible backer iron, right? For like mounting, for like dry mounting photos, that kind of thing.
I that could be the case. I'm aware of it from model aircraft builders.
Okay.
So people who make like balsa wood, like biplanes and like classic planes and things like that. After they do the like the rigid body out of like balsa wood, they'll wrap it with essentially like a plastic. And this thing, when you iron over it, it like heat shrinks it onto the surface.
Nice.
So
yeah, we should definitely have one of those.
It's pretty handy. So just getting these little bends, I just set it against the surface, heated it up, until I got the shape that I wanted. And I did it pretty freehand. I think I had was just doing this on like the edge of my desk.
And where are those details on the helmet?
That's on the inside. So you can see me clipping them in. That's where the visor is going to slide into place.
I see.
So it's going to slide right under these 3 points or 4 points. So there's this little catch there.
Rad.
Here's the.
There's the Greeley.
Yep, the Greeley. Yep. So this thing came in just kind of a generic colored resin. So I had to paint it. Also, I had to paint the snout of this thing. So I actually painted it by hand with acrylic paint, which at this point I would not recommend. I would say an enamel paint is probably the way to go, just because it scratches. The acrylic scratches so easily off the surface of this thing. Like, you really just put a fingernail against it and it just goes immediately. So yep, that's spray painting it, getting everything glued into place. Yeah, seeing everything finish up was really satisfying. Kit also came with small vinyl decals, so exactly the kind of vinyl decals that we could just cut on the vinyl cutter in the space. Getting the little last vinyl
the little
decals
nose vent there, yeah.
Yep, the small things. And at this point, I don't think I have a picture of it, but there's the finished helmet, and of course the finished helmet in person. And I ended up spray painting the inside again with essentially like a kind of a matte spray paint. And this is another thing I would recommend doing probably in an enamel, because you can see it scratches pretty darn easily. There's lots of little bits and pieces on there.
But maybe, adding to that sort of like ancient futuristic look of the Star Wars universe in a way. I mean, some battle scars you're talking about that, like intentional like faux distressing, that the sort of stuff that like, this is a speeder helmet, so you're flying through indoor, like you're going to have some pine sap and probably some bugs stuck in your teeth. And you can only imagine like, Ewok hair.
Ewok just exploded across the front of you.
God. Jesus.
But Yeah, I mean, like distressing it is definitely the fun part, but it's one of those moments like after you finish and you've made like this pristine object, it's a difficult moment to say now to add like mud and dirt to it. Although I absolutely love that. I think that's so cool about the Star Wars universe is just like that lived in bit of like every single prop and set piece.
Everything's old and dirty and chipped and like scratched. And I think that was why you know 9 out of 10 people with eyes and ears would agree that the prequels sucked because everything was too shiny and clean. And then so that begs a couple of questions, but I'll get to some viewer questions here first. Adrian wanted to know if vacuum forming is how they made Jabba the Hutt.
I would expect not. Probably maybe the eyes, perhaps. Like those big, like bulbous glass eyes that might be like a vacuum formed, like clear acrylic. How they accomplished that, but I want to say that's probably more of a silicone mold making process that was stitched together afterward.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was under the impression that Jabba was a normal sized slug and he was exposed to large amounts of radiation from like probably the Godzilla universe. But what you're talking about makes probably more sense.
Yeah, I think they had like three or four puppeteers inside Jabba when they had him on set. So there was like one person for each hand and somebody who was manipulating the tongue and another one that was doing the eyes, just to get all the crazy movement in that particular character. And that's such a cool puppet. Like that must have been awesome to work on.
It's a great puppet. And then they went and ruined it with the prequel and then the digital remakes of A New Hope, where Jabba's confronting Han, trying to get out of Precisely. Everyone knows this. I don't need to say this out loud. Everyone, literally everyone knows this stuff. It's basically U.S. history. So I think I would be remiss, Adam, if I didn't point out that literally anyone that's still watching this wants to see this helmet on your head. And this, in fact, I got you probably can't see these comments because I got a different channel, but there's 46 people now that want to see you put this helmet on.
All right, I'm gonna put the helmet on. So I'm gonna lose audio for a second because that's all coming out of here. But I'm gonna do this.
I'm just gonna sit here in anticipation. Take your hat off. There you go. Excellent.
There we go.
What?
That's not going to work. But so that's the Scout. Actually,
that's
I have a
excellent.
voice modification kit that I'm going to be adding in here eventually. Gives you that cool trooper clicks and radio buzz.
I've seen those. I'm a big fan. Excellent. Well done. Oh, man. So all 46 of those people are now clapping. That thing. Really cool. R.D. Holb says, add an N95 filter and wear that whenever you leave the house.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's actually probably one of the silver linings of the COVID era, is that Star Wars helmets, which are like everyone is wearing a helmet in Star Wars, right? It's pretty difficult to walk outside before this while wearing a helmet or a mask. Now it's just totally normalized. You can be Boba Fett, and people will just kind of accept you.
Your backpack got jets. Yeah, I think that's great. I was putting jets in my backpack from REI the other day, and it just melted into like a really hot, kind of molten mess on the middle of my back, and I got a scar. So probably vacuum form, I'm guessing.
That's probably what you got to do next. But yeah, it's cool project. I mean, like there's a lot to it. There's a whole like fabric side, like the Scout Trooper uniform is mostly fabric. So the people who are like looking up the patterns for those kinds of things did a really amazing job. Just people in like, whenever like Star Wars costumes are out on tour, like it was here in Denver a couple years ago.
Yeah.
You see the replica prop people like looking at the tiny details, being like, how do they stitch like the the collar of the thing, or like what's underneath like that piece of armor? Is there like a what size strap is that? Is it oh, it's
always
doing
like that. I always like that about Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just wearing like Boba Fett's just wearing like mechanics overalls from like a 1960s like MGB garage, and then a turtleneck and some like welding gloves, and then he's still somehow like the sort of the scariest bounty hunter in the universe.
I don't know. Yeah, lightsaber. Luke Skywalker's lightsaber is a flash from an old Graflex camera. So like what they would have, like sort of like reporters would have at one point, with like this long silver stem with a flash on the end. If you unscrewed that stem with the flash bulb, you have the lightsaber. It's like 90% done at that point.
Really?
All that was added, I think, was essentially like a small piece at the top, and then they added some black. I think it was like window like ribbing, like the kind of stuff that you'd find like on the edge of like a window, just like in like strips along the side to give it like what appears to be a grip.
Perfect. There you go. Like more replica props. So before we run out of time, vacuum former, like how would people use that? So we have one, but what people don't really know, so you mentioned the buck, like, so talk about the basic process about that before people get too excited and start bombarding us with calls to use the vacuum former to, Adrian's going to be like, can I form my hand? And we're going to say, no. What do you need? What do you need to actually use the machine?
So to actually use the machine, you're going to need some sculpted piece beforehand, and 3D printing is actually awesome for this. And you need to be thinking about this as having some kind of flat back and a sculpted top, because you're really only getting what the plastic can fall down onto. Nothing can have really sharp edges. So if you had a square box and you're trying to form that square box, as the plastic is being pulled over those sharp corners, it would tent really weird and get weak in those positions and would probably fail. So what I would recommend, just get on the net, look for making bucks for vacuum forming. There's plenty of really cool resources out there. And you'll get more of an idea of what those things are going to end up looking like. But once you have that, and once we've got access to that tool with the public again, we should be able to start making this kind of thing during our open studio hours. If I'm not
Halloween
mistaken.
is right around the corner, and I still don't have my full Boba Fett armor costume. It's been 42 years.
Now's the time.
Awesome. So next week, folks, join us. So we see some of you out there in the audience that have things to show the community that you have not shared in this forum yet. You could be camera shy, but remember, it's not television, it's YouTube, and it's the best we can do. Adam, thank you so much for actually showing me how this thing gets made, because the design of it is so clean and well executed that it's really easy to forget that this breaks down into processes that you could access in a makerspace just like Building 61.
Absolutely, and I really hope to see some more Star Wars fans out there come to the space, make your own costumes, or really any kind of sci-fi or fantasy fan. You can talk to me about all this kind of stuff. I'm going to be down. Figure out how to make that thing.
Great. Well, again, Robbie and Emily, we miss you. Hope to see you both back here soon. For those of you that are still watching at home, thanks for joining us tonight. Sign up. Show us what you're making. We'd love to see it. And we will see you again. Will we see you again?
We will see you again. Go to building61.org. Check out that calendar. The event is there. If you sign up, you'll get the StreamYard link to join us when the time is right. So, yeah, we hope to see you soon.
In a galaxy, preferably nearby, but could be anywhere, really. It's your choice. You could be from anywhere.
Dun, 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 dun. Yep.
All right.
All right.
Adam, once again,
signing
thanks.
off. Thank you. And have a good night, everyone. Keep on making.